clarification I want to make that, you know, Democrats for some reason put us all in one group, and we're not. We're Americans.
And that was U.S. Senator Tommy Tuberville explaining his comments he made recently on white nationalism in America. Tuberville is getting some pushback from his Republican colleagues regarding his comments.
Joining us live now to discuss this topic and more is WSFA's White House correspondent Jon Decker. Jon, what did Senator Tuberville initially say, and what was the reaction from the Senate Republican leaders?
Well, Senator Tuberville, in a series of interviews, was reluctant to say that white nationalism is racism and that those who espouse white nationalism are themselves racist. He ultimately, 24 hours later, after getting incredible amount of pushback from his own Republican Senate colleagues, agreed that white nationalism is indeed racism. Among those pushing back on this, the leader for Republicans in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, who definitively said that white nationalism is racism, has no place in the Republican Party, and he even said it has no place in the U.S. military. So quite a turn of events for Senator Tuberville over the course of the past 2 days.
Jon, switching gears just a tad bit, the two-day NATO Summit in Lithuania concluded. What were some of the commitments that NATO leaders made as far as the ongoing war in Ukraine?
Well, the NATO Defense Alliance made a commitment for security assurances to Ukraine so that they can defend themselves going forward over the course of the next few years, to defend themselves from Russian aggression. Before President Biden left for Europe, he announced that the U.S. would provide Ukraine with cluster munitions. And while President Biden was in Lithuania, other countries that are members of NATO also announced major security packages. France announced long-range cruise missiles that they will provide to Ukraine. Germany provided a major defense package, including 25 tanks and also additional cruise missiles. So a lot of security military equipment being provided to Ukraine, being announced for Ukraine during the course of this two-day summit.
Jon, what was the reason behind the decision to not give a timetable for accepting Ukraine as a member of NATO?
Ultimately, the reason has to do with what's known as Article 5 of the NATO Charter, which stipulates that an attack on one NATO member is an attack on all of NATO. And that was the reason that was given by President Biden for not accepting Ukraine into NATO immediately. To do so, it would mean that the U.S. and every other NATO member, all 31 NATO countries, would technically be at war immediately with Russia. And even President Zelensky said in comments he does not want to see what he called World War III. So that's the reason ultimately that there was no commitment to provide Ukraine membership in NATO anytime soon.
Back in Washington, a contentious hearing today on Capitol Hill involving the FBI director. What were some of the criticisms that Republicans leveled at the FBI?
Well, it was just about every Republican on the House Judiciary Committee that had criticisms that they leveled against the FBI Director Christopher Wray, who was named to that position by former President Donald Trump. They spoke of how they believe there is politics that filters into the decisions that are being made by the FBI, the weaponization of investigations. That's the way they framed it. And they asked some very tough questions to the FBI director regarding the investigation into Hunter Biden and the Biden family, asking where those investigations stand. FBI Director Christopher Wray declined to answer those questions in that they are ongoing investigations, also asking some very pointed questions in regards to the indictment of former President Trump and the search of the former president's home at Mar-a-Lago in August of last year. So a few hours, as you put it, of very contentious questions being put to the FBI director.
Jon, did Democrats defend the FBI director during his testimony?
They did. You know, this was one of those odd things in the sense that typically over the course, I would say, of the past few decades, Republicans have been seen as the party of law and order, supporting law enforcement. But that was not the case today. Republicans very critical of law enforcement, some calling for the defunding of the FBI or removing the FBI headquarters entirely out of Washington, D.C. It was Democrats who were very supportive of the rank and file workers of the FBI, defending the integrity of those who work at the FBI, and also defending the work of the FBI Director Christopher Wray.
Jon Decker live in Washington, D.C. Jon, thanks for the updates.